Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we are going to be doing a different intro today. That is because, guess what? 11th Hour Games is sponsoring this video. That means that they wanted me specifically to show you guys the tippity top of Runemaster gameplay. So, of course, I've come to showcase my one button setup. Now, of course, since EHG is paying the bill this time around, this means that I have enough budget for some music. So you damn well know we're going to abuse the heck out of that. So, cue the intro. Now that we're done having fun with the intro, now we can get to business, shall we? So since EHG was sponsoring this video, I thought I would pull out a spicy build for you guys. This time around, we're going to be playing Frostclaw Lament of the Lost Refuge. So Frostclaw is a new skill that was added this patch alongside Runemaster, and it is now one of the bread and butter skills of Mage. It has one of the best animations ever, and it feels amazing to use. And I'll be honest, I don't think it needs a nerf or anything. I think it's as strong as it should be, as it is a very fun skill to use. So Frostclaw has a node inside of it. It has a lot of flat based on your melee flat on your weapon. So for instance, if you have like an axe with like 20 melee flat, that would be added as spell damage. This is really strong, as we can start abusing this. Now, you can be boring and just use a scepter or use like maybe a two-handed staff with flat on it, but it starts to get a little crazy with uniques, as uniques aren't really balanced around the fact that this exists. That means that there's some really spicy combinations, and the combination I wanted to showcase today was Lament of the Lost Refuge. Now, yes, as you can tell, all of that flat, yes, is added as spell damage. So is the spell damage, and so is the spell damage from Void Heraldry. That means that this staff, or spear, whatever you want to call it at this point, has well over 320 flat total for us. That is a lot of flat. For reference, most endgame builds maybe push up to like 100, 140, depending on what you're playing, especially for spells. So that means that Frostclaw has a lot of flat to deal with. Now, one of the biggest problems, two of them actually, one of the biggest problems, the first one, is going to be keeping up your stacks of volcanic heraldry, like the volcanic or void heraldry stuff. These stacks give you a lot of movement speed, mana regen, and of course flat spell void damage, which we definitely want to be using. Now, the problem is, of course, you have to be casting Volcanic Orb, but thankfully that was fixed this patch by the addition of Flame Rush in the node that allows it so that whenever you use Flame Rush, you cast a Volcanic Orb with you. Now, I need to talk about this real quick. There is a bug currently where if you are hit by a Volcanic Orb shard, there is a chance that you get up to max Void Heraldry stacks instantly. I don't know why this is in, but it's whatever because I've managed to fix it anyways, because with the node, at the end of the volcanic orb tree, the one that spews out a bunch of projectiles, seems to work just fine for giving us all 12 heraldry stacks, even if they will fix the bug, quote unquote, right? You won't have a single difference in gameplay, which is great. Now, of course, yeah, 320 flats a lot, but of course we're stuck with a spear, and this spear has two different damage types on it. So the adaptive spell damage you can see there, that is actually lightning damage because of course, our Frostclaw is lightning, and all of that melee void damage or whatever, all of that is void stuff. So we're splitting between void and lightning. This is normally a very bad idea because you need to be scaling penetration, you need to be scaling increased damage, and if it's not typed, it's harder to deal with. But thankfully, Runemaster's up to the task. And that is because, guess what? When you have 320 flat, You just need to grab a bunch of increased damage. Now, thankfully, EHG has freshly nerfed the vitality affix on prefixes, meaning that it's not really worth running anymore unless if you're stacking vitality, which means that we can use our chest for all of the increased damage ever that we could ever need. All of this combined leads to a lot of damage. When you start multiplying 320 flat, it starts to get big really quickly. Now, Frostclaw also has a node in it. Normally, what it does is it shoots out 3 projectiles that don't shotgun, and then an explosion which can hit the same target as the projectiles. Now, of course, there's a node after that that allows you to hit with all 5 projectiles instead of just an explosion, which is really strong for us as it takes our added damage effectiveness and multiplies it by effectively 5. This is really strong, as you can tell in the footage. We hit a lot, we armor shred a lot, we essentially just turn into a machine gun of terror, and it is wonderful. Now, the title of the video I'm going to be talking about is the, one button potential. This is because in last Epoch history, EHG has gone around and made sure that for the most part, you want to be using most skills when you're playing your build. Like you want to be playing multiple skills. Like you want to have a single target skill, a clear skill, a buff skill, a movement skill. They want all of that. Now, this build kind of goes against that by just having a movement skill and a damage skill. Now, of course, we have utility on our bar, like our mana strike to give our mana back, or our flame ward, but these aren't usually pressed often, which means that essentially it is as close to a one button playstyle build as humanly possible. Now, of course, you do need to every so often use your flame rush, but even in Path of Exile, you use your dash or your flame dash too. So it's as close to a one button build as humanly possible without sacrificing too much damage. Now, our damage is a little bit lower than if like we were spamming other skills, but that's completely fine because the gameplay of the build is so satisfying, you can essentially just ignore the fact that we're dealing a smidge less damage than other setups. And it's just so satisfying, man. I couldn't really take my hands off the build. I kept playing it. I was having way too much fun. So, with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build in more detail, shall we? And also, thank you, EHG, for sponsoring this video. This is the kind of support that helps me keep working on the game like this. All right, here we are in game with the character. So we're going to go through skills. So first things off, we're going to go with Frostclaw. 4 points into Rending Cascade. This is very strong as it allows us to actually run Lament to the Lost Refuge because one of the biggest problems that this thing has is lack of base crit, meaning that, of course, we need it here. Now, of course, we put 3 points in Glandring that allows us to benefit from that gigantic 160 melee flat on the implicit. 3 points to Gift of Winter. I actually went with Gift of Winter instead of Frozen Rain, as it seems like as though it's giving us better uptime on mana. And of course, 5 points in Ardor Scepter, 20% more damage, you won't really complain. 1 point to Spark Artillery. This is to turn our flat damage into something we can abuse because we want as much, damage as possible. And of course, since we're splitting our damage into 2 different types, we need ways of getting penetration. And guess what? Shocked is penetration. Of course, we get abuse modifiers like lightning critical strike multiplier to get a lot of free critical strike multiplier that we wouldn't get nonetheless. Now, this mainly only cares if you have a lightning skill. It does not care what kind of damage you deal with said lightning skill. So the fact that we're doing half void, half lightning doesn't really matter. Eventually, you'd want one on the chest as well, on like a seal, you should have instead of dexterity. So that would be a lot of free crit multi that we could get. Now, 1 point travel to Fend the Frozen, 1 point travel to Bitter Frost, although this is really strong. This allows you to essentially grab every single node on the monolith that, gives you an ailment. It's very strong. 1 point into Hand of Morodatus, so we get 2 extra projectiles, then Volley of Glass so that we hit in a burst. All of this combined means into a really mean killing machine, which is great. Now, of course, Volcanic Orb. Volcanic Orb only has 2 specific things we care about. We only care about the mana efficiency here and the mana efficiency here so that we can reduce the amount of mana that Volcanic Orb costs so that whenever we cast it from our Flame Rush, it doesn't cost like a billion mana. Of course, we run Dense Orb. This makes it so that it fires 8 extra projectiles on top of all the other projectiles it shoots, meaning that whenever we finish a Flame Rush, all the projectiles will go out and, of course, hit us, giving us all those juicy stacks. course, as well, you can also grab Explosive Orb and Glove of Fire because EHG was nice enough to give us a lot of MTX in regarding to the Void version of Volcanic Orb, which is really cool. Now, let's talk about Flame Rush. Flame Rush here, this is actually going to end up becoming one of your stereotypical trees in general. That's getting the mana efficiency and cooldowns really strong here. I don't know why I didn't put this extra node in there. Ignore me. That node's supposed to go in here. 3 points here, Runic Eclipse. You want this up as much as possible, so you want to be spamming Flame Rush. And this helps a lot because we get extra duration thanks to Flame Rush. So if we spend like 5 seconds in Flame Rush, we had a 7-second damage over time taken, or not 7. It's like 3 seconds. Then 3 points to Lunar Protection. Extra ward's always great. 2 points to Fiery Overlord because Frenzy is great as well. And of course, speed and range makes it feel a lot better to use as a movement skill. Then 1 point to Magma Starter so that we can cast Burst Volcanic Orb. Mana Strike. This is the stereotypical Mana Cleave setup. Our setup does not consume that much mana. As you can tell, we are not consuming that much mana. So it only takes 1 Mana Strike to actually fill our bar. Also, EHG was nice enough to update the Mana Strike animation with a spear, meaning that guess what? It looks cooler, so of course we're using it. And Flame Ward, your stereotypical Flame Ward tree. I'm missing 1 point here, but stereotypical Flame Ward tree. Now, passives that are important. Main thing we care about is this node for a bunch of extra crit chance based on our intelligence. We want as much cast speed as possible. This node's really strong as we get a bunch of extra spell damage. Spell damage percentage is our best in slot like damage modifier because we're scaling void and lightning at the same time. So we don't want lightning damage, we don't want void damage, we don't want elemental damage. We want specifically spell damage. So it applies to both of our types of spell damage that we're scaling. Runemaster here, stereotypical setup. Rune Cataclysm, not only for the crit and the more damage against enemies at low crit, whenever you crit, you get a really cool aura of runes around you. So cool is cool, Great. Now, other nodes here, this increased spell damage is really good because, like I said, we want as much as possible. This node is really good, 8% more damage. We're not really triggering the raw rune, but who cares? 8 points in the Sanguine Rune Storm, so we can actually get a lot of HP. We want as much HP as possible, so we're grabbing it everywhere. 5 points in Rune Word Inferno. We get a bunch of armor versus shocked enemies. We get 60% more armor against shocked enemies, which is great. Helps us tank against big hits. And of course, 4 out of 5 points to Jagged Veil for a little bit of extra damage and ward gain on crit. So that, of course, we can get a little bit of a buffer when things like T4 Durla are smacking us. Now, let's talk about gearing. So for gearing, helmet. This is like our actual perfect helmet, other than that, of course, that seal. So this is like a beautiful helmet. It could have been on a better base, but I really won't complain. Amulet, cast speed amulets really strong. Res amulets, of course, are very strong. You want crit multi, crit chance. Void pen is fine, but you mainly want spell damage. And you need a source of shred. So you need a voice of shred armor on your amulet or your gloves. Otherwise, you're going to be doing poo poo DPS. Worst Lament of the Lost Refuge. Eventually, when you get a Lament of the Lost Refuge with modifiers, you do not want to put flat on it because we're getting plenty of flat. Because if you put melee flat on it, it would actually affect us because it would actually give more melee flat to add to the damage. But instead, you want to be scaling stuff like spell crit, spell damage, and critical strike multiplier. Also, as well, if you get shred on the suffix accidentally, you can also take off shred off this and save yourself a suffix elsewhere. Rings, stereotypical. This is where you get your spell damage, run intelligence or crit on the prefix and suffixes or whatever. Same thing on the other side here. Belt here, just life. And then for the prefixes, they don't matter because you can have to scale void and lightning at the same time on the prefixes. So you could run something else. It doesn't really matter on the prefixes. We just want a lot of life. And of course, the gloves here, crit chance, intelligence, life on the cast speed base. This gives a lot of crit chance for free, a lot of chunk. As you can tell, that's 300 life right there. Boots here, just life, movement speed. The prefix could be intelligence. I like strength because it gives us more armor, although you could run a better base armor, the Solarum Greaves instead. That would be better than this. And of course, relic here, we have a golden chalice. Cast speed, we don't care about the base, we mainly care about the cast speed, the spell crit, and of course the other stats on it. Now for idols here, we mainly care about ornate glass idols with mana efficiency with Frostclaw and elemental pen with Frostclaw. Since we don't have that much penetration, this is a lot of our damage. So 29k, 22k, we really want that penetration, which is great. want as much penetration as possible, so running 2 of these is great. Also, so increases our mana sustain, which is great. Now for blessings here, let's talk about blessings. You want spell damage leech. You need to be running Avarice or a Bleeding Heart until you get access to this. This is very important as it allows you to dump those 2 items and run other items. This Lightning Res is good, Lightning Shred is good, Lightning Damage is good, mainly Lightning Shred or, of course, Lightning Res. Here, Crit Avoidance, of course, nice. Over here, we want the armor, and over here, we want the armor. So we get as much armor as possible so that we can chunk. For a life build, we go for ward retention dread. You must be wondering, why are we not building ward like every other build? Well, I believe ward is probably going to get a big nerf hammer, so I'm going to keep this build working into the future. So that's why you're getting a life version. Could I change this to a ward setup? Yes, you can, sir. You get like a little life setup, get some other pieces, you'll be good to go. Problem is, you'll be doing probably significantly less damage. So if you're okay with that, then that's fine. Like I said, this is a self-cast build. This is a build that only uses one skill, so it's going to naturally deal a little less damage than the competition, but that's fine because the Monolith gameplay is smooth, effortless, and fun. Also very quick thanks to the Void Heraldry stacks from the buff, which is great. And that's going to be it for the build. With all that being said, this has been Jed. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Bye.